Fear tactics. Trauma-based intrusion into the mind of the target. Fear is a tool, and we're going to talk about it. Getting the target's attention is crucial. Building that labyrinth of association and sensitization, well, that's a prime objective of gang stalkers. They want to control you. You're that little chess piece on the chessboard, and they want to move you around. And it's important that you remember that. Whether you're being frightened, whether people are trying to piss you off, whether people are trying to distract you, doesn't really matter what the manipulation is. You have to know the motive. They want to control you. And, having protocols in place for whatever situation you're in, whether you're having one of those days where there's 1,000,001 coincidences that can't really be possible, or whether, you're just dealing with things that are strange and creepy. By the way, I looked out my window yesterday, and this is what I saw. My neighbors they were just staring at me. No, that's not my neighbors. I'm just joking. Targeted individuals do have to deal with that, though. They have to deal with synchronicities, directed conversations, street theater, gaslighting. A lot of weird things come into play. And, just trying to figure that stuff out for new targeted individuals, well, it's a trap. And a lot of times it provokes fear, anxiety, and they want that. Because with that, they can create those associations, and they can use that trauma-based infiltration to get into the mind of the target. I was watching another channel, and I was listening to an example from a targeted individual about a directed conversation. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I thought it was a good example. It had to do with, somebody that was out in the country and their vehicle broke down. They had to, fix it. They had a little flat tire, all these little details can come into play, right? That other people just shouldn't know. That's, what a directed conversation is. You have to be very careful that you're not reading into it. And, really, the only way, and I've talked about this in videos before, to avoid that is to just not listen to what anybody's talking about unless they're talking to you. It took me a long time to do it. It did because, once a target gets hit with innuendos and directed conversations and synchronicities and all that freaky stuff, they start looking for it. They do. And, it's like your brain is being reprogrammed. When you're talking to somebody after you get hit with innuendos or whatever, it's like you're trying to figure out what they're saying when they're not really saying it. And you're reading into it. You're looking at their facial expressions, and you're trying to, figure what's going on underneath, and it totally violates the true meaning of communication. And it's meant to, to get the targeted individual to a point where they're dysfunctional. And, it's just a way to reprogram the way they think. And I think directed conversations are the same way. Because, really, it doesn't really matter, okay? And the freaky thing about innuendos and directed conversations like that is, how do people know? And we've talked about that. There's a lot of ways. You could set up something, right? Or, you could have somebody who's monitoring you. Or it could even be worse than that. It could be freakier. And you could be dealing with something that's demonic. And we know that the spirit realm, the spiritual dimension, has a different perspective than we do. We're in our little 3-dimensional time dispensation, moving, linear into the future, but, they're not. And they can use that. They can mess with you. And I've mentioned before as well that a lot of targets get freaked out and they become afraid. And sometimes they'll even go on the run. And when they do, it's like everything is just set up in advance, like they know where you're going, right? That's when targets really get freaked out. I've run into that stuff, and I've seen people who have dealt with it, and it just, oh man, I mean, there's this one guy that I dealt with was just, he was gone. You know, I met him in the hospital when I was getting ready for detox, and this guy, they shot him up with a bunch of Invega, and he was my roommate for the first 3 days. He didn't say a word, right? Because we got to go through the crisis center, and then you got to go up to the treatment center. He didn't say a word, and the only thing he said was, "I'm not crazy." That was the first thing he said to me. And, he started talking to me and telling me what was going on. The freaky thing was he had evidence that, people had been, messing with him. He had evidence that someone had literally stole all the money out of his bank account, and they had no answer for it. And he had the thing that he was freaking about was that the doctors and everybody there could see he had a little file with all this evidence, and they didn't care. And, I started talking to him, and, I explained to him what was going on. And he was glad that he was my roommate. We'll put it that way. Maybe that was a God thing, hopefully. But, getting back to the point is, this guy went on the run. He went down to Mexico, and he said it was everywhere. He literally couldn't get away. He tried to leave the country. I've had people say, that to me before. You need to leave. You need to leave leave this part of the country. You got to leave your city. You got to get out and head to the East Coast. No, you can't get away from it. There's things that you can change. There's things that, if you're experiencing harassment that's localized, maybe at a job or whatever. But you know what? Depending on what you're dealing with, you can run, but you can't hide. Okay? That's just the reality of it. So, if you're out there and you're getting these directed conversations and you're wondering how people know these things, well, there's a lot of explanations, but really, the solution's the same for you because you shouldn't be listening. And the only reason that these little games are being played with you is to manipulate you. It's to freak you out, right? And, it's really not that big a deal when you think about it, especially for people who are dealing with that stuff that's like almost clairvoyant. The spiritual dimension has a different perspective than you do. That's it. That's all it is. Don't make a big deal out of it. And, the only thing that is really going to push back when people are going to great lengths to get a reaction out of you is for you not to react. Just go about your day as you would have if it never happened. It's the mystery and, all these little methods that are unknown to the new targeted individual that makes them vulnerable. The whole idea is to get that shock and awe, to freak you out, to get you scared, to get you anxious, and to distract you and to get you wondering. And also to isolate you. And, we're all social creatures. And when we feel that we've been, kind of excommunicated out of, the main, group of society, which is what targeted individuals are dealing with. It's like excommunication, right? Because, the majority of people out there, they're in the system of this world. And there's a lot of people that don't know anything about it, but there are more people that can be used and manipulated by the kingdom of darkness and by social coercion than there are, genuine people who will, stand up for, the guy that's getting bullied, the underdog. There's a lot of people out there that, they know about this stuff. They're not going to do anything. It's a social dynamic. And you got to be realistic. I mean, people that know about this stuff, and there are a lot of people that do, they might not be involved in it, but they certainly are afraid. If you knew and you weren't a targeted individual, that people could, turn your life into this, nightmare world, I would help, but I would do it secretly. I don't hold people in the place where, they're obligated to do things for me. They are obligated not to get involved. Okay. But they don't have to go beyond that. I've got enough problems to deal with, and I've got enough perps that I could get pissed off at, to where if there's somebody that knows something and they're too chicken shit to do something, well, that's normal for targeted individuals, because you're gonna be dealing with that a lot. You're gonna be dealing with that everywhere. All these methods and tactics that come at targets, well, you have to look at it as a scientific equation, okay? And if you do that, it's going to help, because a lot of times when stimuli comes at the target, whether it's fear-based or whether they're trying to agitate you or whatever, you have to see the motive, because what happens is you're going to take it personal. It's like smack talk in sports. As soon as the target starts to take stuff personal and they become manipulated emotionally, the game's over for them. They've already lost. And it's the same way with targeted individuals. They want to get into your skin. Period. They'll do it any way they can. And that's how you're going to be manipulated. So remembering that it's an equation. There's a motive. They're trying to cook something up. And if you keep that in mind, it's going to help you out a lot, because, a lot of times you'll get something that'll come at you, whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. And there's going to be a reciprocal effect in your brain. It's like when you hear a song on the radio or whatever, it just kind of, it's like reverb in your mind. It's like that echo effect. And then eventually you quit thinking about it. It might be a little while, though. And that's the way this stuff is. It comes at you, and they know, and a lot of it has bait to it, right? Let me show you how right I am. It's trickery, right? You might, get drawn out that way. I was, cleaning out one of my apartments one time, and I'm inside there, and, I was just about ready to get done doing it. And the neighbor just decided they were going to come in, right? Uninvited. And, I was in the kitchen area, and I seen the door open, and I'm like, what the hell? And they heard me, and then they closed the door real quiet, and I walked out, and I said, is there something I can do for you? And the whole thing was designed to agitate me. I know it was, because they started in telling me they had the right to just come in my apartment and all this, that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But I knew that this, the whole thing was just ridiculous. And, and so I just played it off, and I'm like, well, okay, whatever. And instead of, I could have said, well, you don't have the right to come into my apartment. Let me show you how right I am, because, and it's ridiculous. Okay. And this person had tried to start, things with me, before that. I'm going to do a video on that, and I'm probably going to call it Troublemakers, because, this whole, methodology is done with a lot of different tactics, and those troublemakers, man. And it's always ridiculous too. A lot of times when you're dealing with people on the internet, maybe in an open forum or something, and they'll just come at you with something stupid that is wrong. And they know it's wrong too. They're just trying to draw you out and play a little game with you and agitate you, because they want to manipulate you. And they can use your emotions to do it. Whether you're getting agitated, or, whether you're becoming perplexed, or whether they're just trying to freak you out. That's how they're going to play you, like an instrument. And that's how targeted individuals are manipulated, guys. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.